Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the... Oh my God, Howard the Humongous! We Westerners have a little problem. You could call it apocalypse addiction. We are in love with the idea that the world is about to end. The world is about to end? Surely nobody would be crazy enough to believe in such a thing. Well, we're not only crazy enough to believe in it, we're crazy enough to believe in it when the predictions come absolutely false, when they do not come true. But wait, first let's get to the end. It's time for us to replace apocalypse addiction with a paradise fixation, knowing that paradise is something you dream your ass off to conceive, and then you work your ass off to achieve, even if you have to achieve it one tiny little step at a time, even if you can't achieve it in one generation, even if it has to be achieved in 2 generations or 3. Now let's get back to our basic theme. Apocalypse addiction? Really? Well, it seems to have begun with a guy named Yehoshua from a town named Nazareth. Yehoshua is known more commonly these days as Jesus. And Yehoshua had a fixation. He was sure that the world as we know it was about to end, that the kingdom of God was about to arrive and replace everything, wipe out all of the old world and replace it with a dramatically new world. Yehoshua, Jesus, was so convinced of this that he went to Jerusalem, which is quite a schlep from Nazareth, to hold his Passover service, the service where Jews traditionally place an extra cup at the table for the prophet who is supposed to come announcing the coming of the Messiah. Jesus went to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover meal, and was convinced that the Messiah would indeed arrive, and the second, or not the second coming, I'm sorry, it's called the kingdom of God, was about to sweep everything in sight away and replace it with a brand new world. What actually happened? Did the kingdom of God arrive after the Passover meal was over, or even in the middle? No, the Romans arrived. The Romans dragged Yehoshua off. The Romans put him through the cruelest, most publicly vicious torment that they had been able to invent, crucifixion, which they sometimes did with hundreds or thousands of people at a time. This time, they were doing it with Jesus. Now, look, this guy had predicted that the kingdom of God was about to arrive. And the kingdom of God definitely did not. What happened was a horrible torture. Did his disciples, noticing that the prediction had not come true, come to believe that Jesus was preaching something false? No. I mean, remember, in science, it's all about prediction and control. You come up with a system that you use to explain things that had formerly been somewhat mysterious. You use that system to make predictions, and if your predictions do not come true, you toss them away. Well, the opposite happened with Jesus' followers. They waited, they waited, they waited. Now, there was a rumor of a second coming, but that did not bring the kingdom of God. And 322 years later, Christians were still believing in Jesus, even though the kingdom of God had never arrived. Well, and today, Christianity is one of the 2 most populous religions in the world. It has over 1 billion adherents. The only other religion on a par with it is Islam, which has 1.8 billion adherents. So merely proving wrong did not make anybody fall away from the religion. Far from it. Well, in 1843, a farmer in upstate New York, William Miller, came up with another prediction. He came up with a prediction that the world was going to end sometime between March 1843 and March 1844. March 1844 came and went. People had given away everything that they owned. They had disowned their families. They had gone off into the mountains to wait for the world to end so they would be among the few who survived. And the world didn't end. It was called the Great Disappointment. William Miller went back to his drawing board. He went back to his pencil and paper. reworked the calculations and discovered that, hey, he'd made a mistake. The world was going to end in October of 1844. Did the world end in October of 1844? Not on your life. We're still here. What happened to William Miller's belief system? It should have disappeared. It should have dropped into the dust, right? Not at all. William Miller's followers are still around today. They're called Adventists, as in Seventh-day Adventists, and there are over 22 million of them believing in the belief system of a man whose prediction utterly failed to come true. But William Miller and Jesus weren't alone in this game. There's a guy named, let's get his name, Charles Taze Russell, who came up with the notion that the world was about to end in 1914. Well, in 1914, it sure as heck looked like the world was coming to an end. World War One had started in 1913. And it was the bloodiest, most appalling war that anybody had ever imagined. It was sheer nightmare. 200,000 people were killed in a single battle in a day. Which is roughly 40 times more than have been killed than the Americans who've been killed in the entire war with Iraq, which is the longest war in American history. But did the world end in 1913? Not on your life. The world is still going today. So Charles, let's get his name right here. Okay, bear with me. What's his name? Taze Russell. Okay, I can't find it. But Russell's ideas did not die. They're still around today. They're the ideas behind Jehovah's Witnesses. Somewhere in my notes here, I've got it. Charles Taze Russell, Jehovah's Witnesses, yes. And you've probably had a Jehovah's Witness knock on your door sometime in the last year or two, or offer you a pamphlet somewhere on the street. We do not give up on ideas just because they're proven wrong. To me, the most important example came in 1968 when Paul Ehrlich, a scientist who specialized in butterfly populations at Stanford University, came up with a book called The Population Bomb. And in The Population Bomb in 1968, Paul Ehrlich predicted that by 1980, which seemed a long way away, way off into the distance, by 1980, he said, there'd be so little room for humans, we would have expanded our population so dramatically that we'd have to stand on each other's shoulders. The world would not be able to produce enough food to feed us, and the result was that hundreds of millions of people would die at a time. This is by the 1980s. Well, did you notice hundreds of millions of people dropping dead at a time of starvation in the 1980s? No, we humans were producing more food than ever before. In fact, we were producing so much food that by the 1990s and 2000s, we were able to take formerly arable land that we had formerly used for farming, out of circulation because we were producing far more food on far less land. And when we took that land out of circulation, guess what happened to the environment? The number of trees and forests grew because forests took over that land. It's now 30 years, over 30 years, since the world was supposed to end in this violent population cataclysm. And it didn't happen. So what's happened to Paul Ehrlich's ideas? They're alive and thriving today. The number of people who talk to me about scarcity of resources, having eked out all of the resources of this planet, being on the verge of imminent starvation, about needing to clamp down on human population growth, are huge. And where did they get these ideas that population growth are going to lead to calamity? They got it from Paul Ehrlich, the guy whose predictions failed. Remember, in science, if predictions fail, you throw them away. I wish I could account for this addiction to the idea of apocalypse. But today, as of today, I simply cannot. But it's certainly something to watch out for. And the opposite is what we have to do. We have to fixate on paradises. Then we have to work step by step to make those new paradises come true. But wait, is that a false idea? That by fixating on paradises and making them come true step by step, we actually accomplish something? Well, look at it this way. If you'd been born in 1850, you would have expected a lifespan of 38.5 years. If you'd been born in 2000, you could have expected a life expectancy of 78.5 years. That's 2 lifetimes for the price of 1. Somehow the things that your great-grandparents, your grandparents, and your parents did before you, somehow what they were doing, step by step, doubled, the human lifespan. If that's what your great-great-grandparents and your great-grandparents could do for you, what do you owe to your great-grandkids another 40 to 50 or 100 years down the line? A doubling of the lifespan to 150. Because that's what's been done for you by people taking one small step at a time toward impossible destinations, and as a consequence, producing a paradise. This is Howard the Humongous speaking to you from the future that it's your job and my job to make. Or, want to know why? Ask how. Now for the off button. I found it!